All right, well, go ahead. Get started. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, God. Okay, Mike. Thank you. Um, hey, guys. Chris Krimitsos here, and we're going to be talking about growing the state of podcasting and YouTube for content creators. And this is a PowerPoint that I've created helping people. A lot of people ask me kind of, what do you do? Who are you? I produce PodFest. So we're going into our 7th year. PodFest is a conference that brings content creators, podcasters from all around the world together in Orlando, Florida. And we love doing it. We love everything about it. I also help consult on the first ever Sheep podcast, which was held in Atlanta last year. We also produce VidFest, which is a YouTube based event that is held at PodFest, and Audio Drama Con, Military Creator Con, which my buddy and fellow friend of Mike's, James Van Pruyen, heads up. And I've consulted on pretty much you name the conference. I've been part of it in some way, shape, or form. Held Pitch Lab, which Felicia Jones put on at PodFest. Consulted on sound education. One of the first ever conferences for the EDU niche professors and education people. Cinema Voce, which was a Latin voiceover. Podcast Editor Conference, which was held at PodFest. First ever podcast editors conference brought together. So I love bringing people together physically and bringing them together. So that's what I do. And the reason why I share this with you is a lot of people say, hey, I've heard your name, Chris Krimitsos. Can you help connect my microphone at my house? And I'll say, hey, I'd love to do that, but that's not what I do. What I do at its most elemental is I'll describe myself as, imagine a podcasting airport. I'm a hub that brings brands together and people together so they could get to know each other and create strategic alliances and new creative endeavors. So that's what really excites me about what I do. I also founded the Joke of the Day, Kid-Friendly Joke of the Day, and I created the network Kid-Friendly. So we have a slew of shows that often people don't even know I do, but it's something that we really enjoy, and we help educate 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And these are very short, fun facts because they're kind of annoying for the parents. And we try and make them short and sweet. So that way the kids get their fix and the parents kind of hit their tolerance level, because some of them are very, very corny, kind of dad joke type stuff. Okay, so if you'd like to learn about what podcasting is, for those who don't know, we created The Messengers, a podcast documentary. This is when it was on Amazon. It is now on YouTube, free for everybody to see with no paywall in front of it. This is what it looks like. Definitely go take a look at it. Share it with a friend. We created this so when you're talking to someone, they're like, I kind of know podcasting, but what is it really? You could share with them this movie that'll help them understand the landscape of podcasting. So what I'm here to do is kind of share what I've picked up over the years, kind of what I would say, not mine, not yours, but ours. And that's kind of the philosophy I bring to the table with what we do. But from an elemental level, what is a podcast? To me, it's on-demand, searchable audio found through the internet or via a computer or mobile device. And a lot of times now, podcasts, people are also considering it a video form. Maybe you're streaming your podcast out on YouTube. But when I'm using the term podcast, because I also deal with YouTubers, I'm usually talking about on-demand audio. If there happens to be video, great. But at its essence, I'm talking about on-demand audio. I really believe that developing and harnessing influence is crucial in the coming age. We've seen now with the coronavirus pandemic, the people that were able to sustain themselves were the people that built audiences that they could communicate through their influence. And they were able to at least have another outlet if their main business was not able to function. Their influence was able to function. They were able to transition because many of these individuals already know how to work mobilely from home and kind of had experience. So this is something I've been literally sharing for the last few years, but it's really come to fruition in this year, showcasing how powerful it is to have a connection with your audience. Now, this is me at a local affiliate station here in Tampa, and a lot of times I'll see people use these logos. We did a tour of the station. We took a picture. And I always ask people, when we went to the station, I'll ask, what was the first thing that we encountered? What do you think the first thing we encountered when we got to the station physically? And ultimately, someone will say security, and I'll say correct. We had to be buzzed in. And the question I always ask people is, why did we have to encounter security, then a front desk person, then a producer had to get us to get access to the airwaves? If you tell a 20-year-old right now that they had to go through security to get access to the airwaves, they would laugh at you. It's an absurd thing to them. And the reason is, when many of us came of age in this area here from the, from the age of media, it was controlled by a few. And the age that we went into here in the 2000s, all of a sudden, all the opportunities opened up. And truly, podcasting of all the platforms is the most democratized of them all because it's truly decentralized. Right now, that's being threatened by Spotify, but there's going to be so many other on-demand audio companies coming online. I think we're going to be okay. But video came on-demand video came on much earlier, and it really got kind of monopolized by YouTube, which is an interesting case study all to itself. But this is where we're at, and what that means is there are more choices than we've ever had. And the way you see the podcasting landscape right now, if you think it's saturated right now, wait till we move forward 10 years from now. We're going to look back as the beginnings of what was going to become the great renaissance of on-demand audio. It's going to be an interesting time to live in the next few years to see it all develop. But we see companies like Tinder, which is a dating app, developing original content. And the question we always ask, why are they developing original content when they're a dating app? And the answer is, content is becoming king because everybody has the same access to the airwaves. Therefore, the only way you can control the eyeballs is having really great content. Apple is creating content, and they're the ones that created the Apple, iTunes store for podcasts. So that tells you a lot of what's going on. Disney Plus, of course, when it first opened up, it crashed due to demand. Now, one of the questions I get when it comes to podcasting is, Chris, I want to speak about everything. I love all these amazing topics, but I just don't know where to start. And one of the case studies I always ask them, do you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is? And, 8 out of 10 people do. And they'll say, yeah, he's an entrepreneur, a thought leader, coach. And I always ask them, do you know how he started? Now, some people that remember him from his book Crush It, but even before that, Gary started with Wine Library TV. He started talking about wine, and then there was an opportunity for him to talk about social media, which came out when he talked about the book Crush It. And then he was able to leverage that into a more general topic of entrepreneurship. And I always tell people, start within a defined niche. It's much easier to grow outside that defined niche than being all things to all people. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. If you're already highly leveraged, a celebrity, you already have an audience that you can take with you to these platforms. But if you don't, and you're starting from somewhere, you're better off starting in a niche because there's an audience probably waiting for that content creator within that niche. So this is Rachael Ray, and a lot of people don't realize, even though Rachael Ray is like a younger Martha Stewart type brand, she started with a cooking show on the Food Network, and it was a very specific niche. It was 30-minute meals with Rachael Ray. And at that time, we were going through a time in households where mothers wanted to create something very healthy for their children by and large, but they didn't have a lot of time. So she filled that void with healthy meals in 30 minutes or less. They got tired of cooking macaroni and cheese and all the instant kind of foods. So she was able to capture that niche, and from that niche, she was able to expand outward to where she now has a daytime talk show that represents multiple niches all in one. Now, this one, I will share with you, this example kind of makes me feel old at times, because when I ask people, do you know how Ellen started out? Not everybody remembers Ellen DeGeneres in her original career. They remember her from maybe her sitcom, but they don't remember her from her stand-up on Johnny Carson. So she was a stand-up comic that then got into a sitcom that then leveraged it for daytime talk. So this is another example of one of the most famous people on the planet and how they were able to start in a niche, expand outside that niche until they are an everyday brand that everybody recognizes. Now, this is the microphone that I'm using right now. The Audio-Technica AT2005 is one that a lot of people overlook because a lot of us will recommend the ATR 2100. Microphones are very personal to a lot of people. I will tell you, though, this is a solid microphone. It's USB enabled. It sounds great. I always get really great compliments. It's under $100. Great microphone to use. And because it's USB, it's very easy to plug right into a USB port. And the one thing I always tell people, make sure to turn on the mic. That's probably the hardest part. A lot of us will forget it off. We forget to hit record, and it creates bigger problems down the road. And I usually use Zoom when I'm recording. I really love that. And you want to make sure that your podcast is in the iTunes store because 70 to 80% of listeners will go through that store to listen to a show. Now, if you ever get stuck on a how-to, my favorite advice to tell anyone that needs help, go to YouTube and Google how-to. More than likely, the video you're looking for is there, and you could get the help in real time instead of waiting for someone to show you how to do something. There's probably someone already on YouTube already creating that video. If you cannot find that video, figure it out, record the video, and you put it on YouTube and get all that free traffic. Now, people always ask me, how do we grow a show? How do I find opportunities? And this is one that I really like to talk about, which is study the format and find the opportunities via the format. What I mean by that is, let's say you're entering a crowded space and you want to create something that the audience will gravitate towards. My wife started meditation for women. So she studied the meditation category. It was extremely robust. There was a lot of shows there. But she has one differentiator. Hers are for women, so it's the feminine that she focuses on. And then the other thing she did was she labeled her shows in ways that millennial women could really relate to. And it was different than the way the titles of other shows were labeled. So Shatter Imposter Syndrome, Are You Feeling Blocked? Mommy Needs a Timeout Meditation, Get Rid of Your Headache Meditation. So things like that. And what was interesting is many of the meditations that she was listening to didn't state the intention before they went into the guided meditation. So the format shift that Katie did is not only the titles, but she states the intention of the guided meditation before she starts it. I know this sounds very simple, but she found an opening within a marketplace based on format. You'll see in this chart at the time, I think this was her first year where she was on a weekly basis getting somewhere between 1,000 downloads a week to 2,000 downloads a week. Then she created these sleep bundles where you could buy meditations that you'd like as a collection ad-free off of her website. And then this was in September of, I believe, year 2. She was averaging somewhere around 4,000 downloads a week. And I just updated the slides just before this. She's currently averaging somewhere around 25 to 30,000 downloads a week. And the show is literally taking off because of that format opportunity, but also we've taken advantage of paid ads to help grow the show and to help get the word out. The other thing that I don't think people really realize is there's a lot of opportunities in keywords that are already working. My friend Bill here created the Rural Health Leadership Radio. Early on, a lot of us called our podcast radio because people didn't know what a podcast was, so we didn't want to explain it. When we called it radio, they understood. But when you see in iTunes and Apple, there's a little button next to a podcast called Related. And when you hit Related, you could see shows that are related to you. And in this case, you could see that the word rural is a keyword. And my friend, Dr. Bill Auxier, used Rural Health Leadership for his podcast title, which literally made him the leader in rural health, which are hospitals that are out in the rural areas of the country. He's actually a huge influencer in the US as well as in Australia. Now, most people think of podcasting as a interview format, And I see podcasting as a much more robust medium. It's a storytelling format. It's an area where you could actually do Q&A, question answered. This is a doctor, Dr. Ryan Gray, and he answers questions that doctors have in their pre-med years. And literally what this is him answering questions that people ask of him. They're no longer than 7 or 9 minutes. They're very easy for him to produce. And he's able now to answer questions that he gets asked hundreds of times at once. And I don't think a lot of business people don't realize that you could do this with podcasting. It's really interesting. And also for your fan base, you might create a Q&A show that already pre-records a lot of these questions that people ask and creates an intimate format for them to access and then maybe share with their friends. The other case study I get a lot is B2B doesn't work for me because I'm a B2B, so I don't know if podcasting works. So a gentleman by the name of Kevin Jans, he is a government contracting officer. Basically, he represents RFPs, requests for proposals for big companies looking to win contracts with the governments. His podcast is highly, highly, highly popular. He gets about, I don't know where he's at downloads, but 500 to 1,000. And he's monetized at such a level that his business has taken off because of his podcast. And he always credits us on social media, always giving us shout outs because of that. One of my favorite case studies is my good friend Lee Silverstein, who started with the colon cancer podcast. He's stage 4, he's doing great, he's thriving, he's been beating cancer back, and he's been helping by interviewing other people dealing with cancer. But he realized that he had a bigger calling to serve all people with cancer, and he created the We Have Cancer podcast, which helps people all over the world that are dealing with cancer. But it all started from a niche, the colon cancer podcast. So it's just interesting to watch. He has merch that people buy and support. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do I grow my podcast? Or, hey, I don't have a podcast, but I'd love to grow my business. You could hire a PR agency and go on a media tour without ever leaving your home. Interview Connections and Interview Valet are two phenomenal companies that you could hire for PR to do, and let them know that you saw me talking about them, because I really love what they do, and I love how they help people get the word out for their podcast. This is my friend Craig Cody. He's a CPA. It's probably one of my favorite traffic generating tips that I think anyone could use. He is a CPA that deals with dental practices. And when he gets on a podcast, he's interviewed, he will say to anyone listening, if you need help, go to my website, fill out your information. I will ship you my book free of charge. And he does that and gets so much business for helping people through that book. He doesn't charge anything for the book. He ships it to them. They read his book about how to manage their businesses, that his business is flourishing, helping dental practices all over the country. Now, this is a YouTube example. My good friend Gabe Eloisi launched Private Club Radio. Actually, this is called the Let's Play Through Show. And it just shows you kind of on September 18th of 2019, he had 123 views on this video. And then he basically has an agency, a marketing agent that deals with clubs. So his back end is his business. But shortly thereafter, within a week, his show started really getting hundreds of views and downloads. And he had 307 subscribers. I'm happy to report that his show has grown now to over 1,200 subscribers and thousands of views through all of this. And it's literally helped him be a thought leader in the private golf club community, not just in the country, all over the world. He's been invited to travel to the Arabian Peninsula, Scotland, England. I mean, it's just amazing. He's been to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. I believe he did a Chinese tour, or he's going to do one, but he's been all over the world. The last tip I'll leave you with, Michael, is my good friend who is an AI, artificial intelligence developer of Alexa skills. He basically was teaching his virtual assistants how to program Alexa. And instead of recording it on Dropbox and leaving it there, he figured, let me record it, put it on YouTube, and send it to them via YouTube. Well, he wound up getting 6,000 subscribers, and a little company called Twilio found him and started referring him business because CTO started watching his YouTube channel. My buddy was floored at the level of success he got from putting his tutorials on YouTube and sharing the information free of charge. So I'm going to leave it at that, Michael. I'm going to open it up to questions. I just wanted to give you some case studies and examples that I think could work well.
Yeah, awesome, great, thanks, Chris. That was awesome. Yeah, and so you're up to so much stuff. I mean, your book too.
Yeah, Start Ugly is behind me.
Yeah, you didn't mention that at all.
Well, the book. Yeah, the book in plain simple format is we deal with podcasters and I deal with creatives, and most of us wait for whatever reason to create, and I wanted to rob them of that excuse so they could just get started and know that it's okay. And Start Ugly seems to resonate with people.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, and it's a story.
Yeah, it's actually a fictional account about a very successful business owner that lost his way and forgot that what made him successful was starting ugly. And it's an interesting story about lumber mill in the turn of the century. So it's about an innovation, but by using an old world example that I think everybody could relate. So it was created literally to rob anyone of an excuse of why they can't start ugly.
Oh, very cool. And then it's interesting too, because you just talked about all these people with their kind of eclectic podcasts that bring in business. You know, it's you're right. You just have to get started, do stuff, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if you look at, honestly, because I'm a visionary and I like to think. So even though I take action and it looks like I take a lot of action, there's a lot of stuff I don't take action on. The people that do really well are the ones that don't think too much and implement. Implementers are great because they just implement. Like you give them something, they'll implement it. I'm more of a visionary / ADHD kind of person. So I'm been able over the years to figure out how to focus that energy, and put it into projects that can help people kind of untap their potential.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I started my podcast in like 2006. I did it just for my work, and I didn't care if anyone heard it. Really, because the people I wanted to interview were my clients, so it worked out really nicely for me. I did it weekly for 10 years, and it just was the best thing. And I never really cared if anyone heard it because I was just wanted to talk to the people that I was interviewing. It was purely selfish, and it worked out really nicely. I mean, but that was my little podcast story. But
yeah, I started a podcast called Story Jam Theater years ago, and literally it was all my friends had these great stories and I couldn't feature them anywhere. So one day I just rented a theater and I put this yellow round carpet. I bought this yellow carpet that was our logo. You stood it very much like the moth, right? It was inspired by that. You sat in the middle you stood on the yellow carpet and told your story, and I still have those stories captured for all eternity, but there was no objective other than like, let's share some great stories and put it out there and see what happens. It's one of my favorite shows I ever created.
That's great. How did you get into the events business at all?
So did
you go to school for it or anything, or were you?
No. I just I grew up in a big fat Greek family, so I was born into it, I guess. Into community. So I just enjoy people coming together and helping each other. And when I got down to Florida, I moved from New York. I noticed that you have to realize 9 out of 10 Floridians are not born in our state. So everybody's from somewhere else. So the way we connect is through events. So I figured, hey, let me see if I could connect some people. I was really good at it. And then I was like, well, let's create a community. And I wanted to be surrounded by really positive people. So I set some rules out, and one thing led to another, and the community flourished. So once you start building that muscle, you realize you have a gift. And that's how I got into events.
Very cool. And is the PodFest is the biggest event you put on. I mean, that's
what I do full time. Basically, everything else would be an ancillary thing that I do. It's important, but PodFest is my main thing. Yeah.
And that came out of the meetup.
Yeah, actually, during the Tampa Bay business owner years, I had a local business community. We would have these meetups in the local community, like 3 every week. And I went out to this Mimi's Cafe, and a buddy of mine, this one guy would show up at my meetings, and he'd leave the moment we were done. And it would really bother me because I wanted to get to know him. So one day I said to him, Steve, don't leave the meeting. He's like, why not? I go, I want to get to know who you are. He goes, okay, but I'm not that important. I go, I beg to differ. And little did I know that asking him to hang out so I could get to know him changed my life, because he goes, I like you. Is it okay if I talk about podcasting next month? I said, I'd love that. And literally it was like, I knew of podcasting, but it was the bulb moment, like, this is about to take off. And it's been under my nose all these years, and that changed the course of everything. We still, to this day, I think you saw this, 7 or 8 years later, whatever. From that meeting, it's been like 7 years since that meetup. But we still have 1 or 2 people from that meetup. There was only 12 people there that still attend PodFest to this day. So our roots grow deep from like this little community grassroots to
that's awesome.
2,000 registered people this past year.
That is awesome. Yeah, I remember when I first heard about podcasting, I just thought, because I did production for events, I didn't put on events, but I did all the staging, audio, visual, that kind of stuff, media that would go on and produce that stuff. And I remember they would cut me in these meetings, and it was corporate meetings, they'd cut like 300 people from the meeting. All of a sudden, like 300 people like would be cut. And I was all like, why don't this do podcasting thing? At least you could give them the audio that they could hear. And of course, they're all like, podcast, back then they were like, what the hell is this? They didn't want it. But I was just thinking, that was my thing, like, oh, this is going to change everything, right? I mean, you could, then the hybrid event stuff kind of started coming too, where you could, but I thought the podcasting is great because you could go listen to it when you're doing something else,
You know what the crazy part is? Because you're a pioneer. You've been doing it from almost the beginning of when it came out. We're only at wait till 5 years from now. I mean, people are going to be surprised how much it's going to grow.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I used to go to the Podcast Brothers. Do you know those guys? The Berkman
Ontario,
brothers?
was it? Where was that? Yeah, I've heard that's part of the history of podcasting, yeah.
Yeah, that I still see people that I met at that. And that was a really great one too. But it reminded me of PodFest when I was at PodFest, because it was at this small Ontario, California. And it was this airport hotel, and you flew in. There's nothing there. Now there's all kinds of stuff, but there it was just. And I still like know all those people from there. Like it's just still see them, and it's just so funny. It's just funny.
That's our goal, is to keep that feel. I know you've been PodFest, but a lot of people, the way they describe PodFest is I'll get feedback like, I thought it was 100 people, and I was like, it hasn't been 100 people in like 6 years.
Yeah.
But the way people talk about it, which I love, because of that small, intimate feeling, they're like, it can't be that big,
Yeah, and it's you. I mean, you're the one who it feeds off of you, because I realized that right when I stepped in, because when I got there, because I had heard that too, and I was like, oh, I want to, but it's so far away for, it's like, that's the only thing for us out here. It's like, it's all the way across the country. But right away, and you were like, hey, Mike, how are you? I was like, how the hell does he know my name? Like, how the hell? Like, you were amazing. You're really good at the names too. I think.
Well, I like you as a person, so I tend to remember your name.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. See, and you know what to say.
Well, no, truly, it's. I don't know if it's a name thing, but if I like someone, and we had some great conversations at other conferences, it was just nice.
That's great. Okay, so also you, so what's going on with the online stuff? So you did an online one that I attended recently. That was really fun, and then you're doing another one.
Yeah, we are. I'm going to be talking with.
Is that something you could talk about, or is it like?
Here, I could hint to it. We'll be doing a very big one in the summertime, and we might be going for a certain kind of record. So I'll be announcing it shortly.
Nice. Yeah,
so
that
whole point is that we want to bring the whole world together to our doorstep. So the one you attended, Mike, we did a mini test, 3 days. We rolled it out on Saturday. We delivered. But what we found interesting is, because we have so many great people like yourself that know the quality of content that we're delivering, they're forwarding. They're like, hey, make sure to get on this. So we had people from Mumbai, India, from all over the world forwarding our links to their own like groups that they're part of. So it was interesting to see 874 people register without any promotions. Like we promoted to our list, but we really didn't. Our speakers didn't really promote it. We only had 10 or 11 speakers, and we had 874 people with a 3-day lead time, which is, for us, it was good to see that. It's good to see that the brand is growing.
Yeah. And so are you going to stay out there then? I mean, if you grow, can you stay?
The challenge, Mike,
You're
is
in Orlando. I guess you can do anything in Orlando.
yeah, in Orlando, we're pulling people from Africa, Israel, the Arabian Peninsula. So you have to realize, I know that from where you are, it's far, but for those people, it's like 20 hours.
Right.
So
right.
Orlando tends to be, for us, on the globe, the way we look at it. And like you said, it's such a big convention environment. We could grow into it when we get,
Right.
we're going to get, in the next 5 years, we can get pretty darn big. So we feel comfortable in that area.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time there working, and then Vegas too is the other, of course, the other one. So would you guys ever come out to Vegas too, or is that?
I love Vegas. That might be, if we get big enough, we'll do a PodFest West. It would be Vegas or Arizona, San Diego. We would play around. I don't know. The challenge with Vegas, it's just I love Vegas personally, but it's you just got to negotiate a good deal, as you know. When it comes to events, negotiation is key.
Yeah. Well, nowadays it seems like you're going to have a good shot at it. Nothing's going on
right now. Right now.
But that's not going to last for very much longer. And then I was interested to see in the Kid Friendly Podcast Network. Is that like, I mean, you made a network out of it. Why'd you make a network out of it? So they're just different shows. Are you selling ads and stuff? Is that like also a moneymaker in there too? Or are you?
Not yet. So one of the things that I do is I do consulting. So I do power days 1 day out of each month. So
What's a power day?
People could lease my brain for a day. I charge $2,000, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. And basically I work on a vertical, whatever they want, right? And it's all strategy. So I was working on someone that wanted help in the kid friendly section. And I went home, I gave them all these ideas, but then they didn't want them. So I focused on what they wanted, which it's really white glove. I understand how someone's brain works, and I deliver what they want. But I went home to my wife and I gave this guy the $1 million idea, the kid-friendly joke of the day. I go, humor is the #1 niche in podcasting, all the comedy podcasts, and there's nothing for children.
Yeah.
She goes, well, why don't you do it? And, I bitched to her. I don't have time. I don't know how to do it. She goes, come on, Chris. If anyone knows how to do it, it's you. You'll figure it out. So that month, just like you do your meetings, I went to my local Florida Podcast Association meeting. And one of our guys is an unemployed comic who has really corny jokes that are great for kids. So as I looked at him, it was like a lightning strike. I go, Jimmy, would you like to do like cheesy jokes for kids for like literally? He goes, I'd love to. I go, great. I had him sign some paperwork. We created a deal. I'm the producer of all the content. He creates the content. And we've had a great partnership, and he creates all the content across all those networks. We get 30, 40,000 downloads a month. I mean, the show's. So here's the crazy part. The moment I launched Kid Friendly Joke of the Day, day one, we had 563 downloads, and all we did was put it on our Facebook walls. What it tells me is my assumption of people were searching for the stuff, and it wasn't there. It was correct. So we cleaned house. And for me, I love that I help kids like mine down the road. If I could flip it to Nickelodeon or Disney, I would happily do that. Let them, build on it.
Very cool. Very good. Good idea. There's James. James is here.
Hey,
and then Doug is asking a question, obvious question. How are you dealing with social distancing at these events? I don't think you're having any events right now, right? But what do you?
Our events are virtual, and I like. It's not social distancing. Technically, it's physical distancing because we're still social. So I'm big on words, and I know we're all calling social, but I have to always ask myself, is that the right thing? So with the events now, I mean, we just did an event outdoors in Florida. So I'll do an outdoor event where we're all distanced 4 or 5 feet from each other and take our chances because it's really hot out here. But, to each his own. It's that's where we're at this point.
Yeah. And I'm sure they're going to come up. I mean, I'm on all those event things from my past, so they're coming up with all kinds of things nowadays. What's what they're going to do. So it should be interesting to see.
I can tell you in Orlando, I did a tour of a hotel. It was really eerie because I go, when's the last time you guys been open? They're like, we haven't been open for 6-7 weeks. Wow. And it was weird because, they turn off the AC, so it smells a little musty. You go around the place, and I go, what are you guys doing now? He goes, we're doing all the renovations that we've been waiting for now because there ain't going to be any groups in here for maybe till September. And then I go, what happens then? We don't know. We might not have groups till the end of the year. Wow. So we'll see. In July, I think there's two big events. There's a huge volleyball conference that's going to come to Orlando.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And then the Comic-Con in Tampa is slated to still go on. And that's about 30,000 people. So we'll see what happens.
So crazy, huh? I mean, what do they get? Yeah.
Well, they have protocols, one way in, one way out. Everybody has to have, I hope everybody has to have a mask. But, they're going to test it out. We'll see what happens when they.
Yeah, I was at one of the protests here in Oakland, and I was down there with my daughter. Actually, we have this electric bike. I ride all around with her, and I couldn't believe how many people didn't have masks on. I was just all amazed. Like, I mean, we were masked up, but just kind of around the fringe. But scary stuff. Scary stuff. Doug says outdoors is better. I work outdoors. Much better transference is true.
In Florida, it's 90 degrees and highly humid. So.
Yeah. So it's the opposite of Vegas, huh? It's,
yeah.
You got your choice, hot or wet, I guess. Huh? Dry or wet, yeah. All right. So, Chris, thank you so much. I know it's late there, too, so I don't want to keep you.
I'm a night owl, Mike, so I appreciate you.
Are you?
Yeah, I'll be. I went to sleep yesterday at 4:30.
Oh, jeez.
I like nighttime. That's when I do my best work.
I'm the totally opposite. I get up.
You're a morning guy? Yeah.
I get up at like 4:35 and work.
Yeah, my wife Katie's like that.
Is she?
I can't do it. She'll.
So you just have each other in the night?
Yeah, by the time I wake up at like 8 or 9, she's already worked like 2 hours. I'm like, what the
heck? Yeah. I do it just because of the kid and stuff. It's just I can get stuff done. So
I get up in the morning. I'm just not functioning.
All right. Well, are there any more questions, Chris? I'll let you go. I don't want to keep you all night, like I said.
Thanks, brother. And, listen, thank you for having me. I really
appreciate it. Yeah, it's great. And are there any other questions out there? Click them in, and we'll ask and wait a couple seconds here, see if any more questions come through. I kind of screwed this thing up because I was like, my posts I noticed weren't the greatest here. But anyway, there would have been more people.
That's okay. Listen, it doesn't matter. People. You get one great person watching this, it's more than enough.
I agree.
I'm excited. By the way, I'm excited about audio dramas. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but I'm excited about what they're going to do.
Yeah, I had Sean Howard was on here a couple of weeks ago. He's a great, smart dude. He was
very.
Yeah. I was reading some of the stuff, and I said, oh, you got to come on. He's a great guy. Great guy. So, yeah, I'm interested in what they're going to do, too. That was one of the things, like, because everybody does interview shows, like what other kinds of stuff will people do? Like you said, dramas, like, but for real business ones, like they could actually do. I mean, look at your book. They can do stories, It's just crazy. I mean, it's just the Wild West.
I've been toying with doing a business one, but there's so many great business podcasts out there. I don't know what I would be able to contribute that's not already out there. So you always try to figure out what like I'm not saying that I want to, if I'm going to do something, I want to make sure it's contributing something additional, not the same stuff. Otherwise, you could just get it out there.
Yeah, I wrote a book. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called Donald, Don't Grab That Pussy. And it's a children's book.
I got to get that for the kids.
It's a children's book that's teaches little Donald Trump how to pet animals. So I did that. But I'm actually working on a podcast for it right now.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it sold a gazillion, like thousands.
That's
like and I just did it on a whim, like
I love that.
Yeah, silly. Silly. The best thing about that is the Amazon reviews are fantastic.
Are they?
Because people just say I'm a pedophile and stuff. I mean, they're just horrible, and then it's like the total it's like our country right now. Everybody's like, it's just funny stuff. Oh, wait a second. There's more questions. I know James says, love you to community. Could you give some examples of audio dramas?
Yeah. So
what is his called? What's Sean's called? It's called Alba Salix.
Alba Salix, yeah. So think of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. That was an audio drama, and then when everything got corporatized with radio, they got rid of that whole segment. So I'll give you a really great one. Travis Vengroff has one called The White Vault. It's scripted audio narrative, and then voice actors will act it out. So the basis of the White Vault is a group of researchers are stuck in Antarctica, in the South Pole, and all their comms go down except for one feed in and out. And all of a sudden, they're trying to figure out what happened with the globe, because something's happened, a pandemic, and they're not getting the updates in the South Pole. And this is all a show. I know it sounds like it could happen, right? Yeah. So all of a sudden, they're getting feeds from all over the world trying to figure out what the heck is going on. So they're creating these audio dramas, these worlds that is fiction. And then what's happening right now is the agents out of Hollywood are picking up these audio dramas and representing them, because it's highly scripted. There's already a fan base, so it's a perfect media property to create into serialized videos for Netflix and whatnot.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, Sarah Ray Werner does One Girl in Space, so it's a girl floating out in space, and you could hear the beep of the satellites out there picking up feeds, and there's a lot of interesting ones. They're really, really creative.
Did you get a lot of people that you had it at PodFest, right? You had the audio drama.
Yeah, so when people think of PodFest, you got to realize, like, underneath PodFest is Audio Drama Con for the audio drama side. Next year we'll have a health and wellness con, but we had Military Creator Con where James Van Pruyen leads the charge. So we have all these. So you wind up benefiting if you show up and you're like, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's a buffet. Go help yourself. And if you want a deep dive, you could do that the whole 3 days. So it's we're known for our content, and we're only going to get better because our people are just amazing, and they understand the bar has been set high, so they always want to achieve that bar and exceed it.
Yeah, one of the best sessions I saw was at your video one when I was at the PodFest. I was like, I don't know anything about YouTube really.
Right.
I mean, and I was like, I was just filling my notebook was like, I was just all like, this stuff is so stuff that you would take you got learning things, you make mistakes, right? It's just like, if you could avoid making a few of those, it's just pays for the trip.
Yeah, the YouTube side is really good.
And let's see, Doug says Business Wars is really good. Have you listened to that?
I haven't, but if it's, I think I'm familiar with what he's talking about. There's some really great shows out there right now.
And then he says, interesting one he listened to is Blackout with Rami Malek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I haven't listened to that. He's the guy from the Robot Guy.
And he played Freddie Mercury in
right.
Queen.
Yeah. He was great in that.
Yeah, there's some, that's the other thing that Doug is bringing up. Hollywood talents getting involved with these audio dramas. Like, it's pretty interesting how big it's getting.
Yeah. My wife is married to an actress, and he was just telling me that she was in something like that too. One of these. She was doing acting for a podcast. Like, oh, she's podcasting now. Because I was telling him like years ago, you guys should do podcasts, and he's
That's
all
awesome.
like, "What the hell's that?" Like, he works in television, so he didn't care about it at the time. All right, Chris, thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Let me grab a screenshot so I could give you a shout out on my end too.
I hope to see you again someday.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, we will. We'll cross paths. We'll just have a little hibernation now, and then we'll all get out and share out what we know. Right.
All right. So I'll see you later.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Boy. Be good.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming to see Chris. I'm sorry I screwed up